Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Rogers, and I'm the Director of Research here at the SRA. And I'd like to welcome you to the virtual conference session on cybercrime, understanding AI and protecting your firm. In this session, we'll be looking at the potential for AI to increase the risks associated with cybercrime. And the way this is going to work is that we'll see a recording of the presentation from our session at the Compliance Officers Conference, which took place a few weeks ago. However, we do want this session to be as interactive as possible, so we'll then have time after that for a new and live question and answer session. To ask questions, you will need to click on the link below this broadcast and then submit your question to us. Now, it's always great to know your name. You can submit questions anonymously if you'd prefer to do so. And I, for one, look forward to hearing the expert panel answer those questions from you. But without further ado, let me reintroduce the panel. The experts who are here with us today will then jump onto the recording itself, and that should last about 30 minutes. So I'm joined on the panel once again by a number of experts in this field. I am joined by Dr. Tom Wood, who is the lead data scientist here at the SRA. He's at the cutting edge of our work with AI and machine learning. I'm joined by Natasha Crombie, who is a detective sergeant with the City of London Police. She's working within the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau. And I'm joined by Rowan Troy, who is a senior cybersecurity consultant at Littlefish UK Limited, an organisation who specialises in providing cybersecurity solutions. And with that, let's begin the video of the session. So let's start with a really important question, and one that we're asked a lot here at the SRA. What do we mean when we say AI? And then we'll explore how that's related to cybercrime in particular. Well, I'm going to hand over at this point to Tom, our lead data scientist, and he will explain.
Cool. So yeah, as we said, we thought it'd be useful to kind of introduce this session or start the session by talking about what actually is AI. It's in the news all the time at the moment, but lots of people, and I suspect lots of people in this room, don't actually have a clue what it is, how it works underneath the hood. So that's what I'm here to do. And I guess I'll start by saying what AI is not. So forget Isaac Asimov, Cyberdyne Systems, and the Terminator. The robots aren't coming to steal your jobs, I promise. AI in its current iteration is literally just a fancy name for statistical modeling. It's a slightly glib statement, maybe biased by my background in statistics, but it's true. And it is already ubiquitous. AI is everywhere. We all use it every day. Every time you're on a Zoom call or a Teams call and your camera autofocuses, if you spell check, you're using AI every day these days. Now, when you signed up, I'm not sure if they told you, but there is a little maths lesson involved in this session. I think we've locked the doors so you can't leave. But to explain what AI is, we need a little bit of maths. So I say it's just statistical modeling. What do I actually mean? And essentially, all of AI can be boiled down into one of two types of kind of overarching types of statistical model. The jargon for these in data science is unsupervised and supervised learning models. But the delineation basically comes from what we're using these models to try and do. So unsupervised learning models are there to spot patterns within data, whereas supervised learning models are there to predict the future, in inverted commas, because it's just the future in terms of the data that we've seen before, rather than necessarily the temporal future. So to show you what these look like, I've got some plots to show you. So let's pretend that we're a law firm, and we're looking at the matters we've worked on over the last, let's say, 6 months. So every circle on this plot is a different matter. Along the horizontal x-axis, we're looking at how much time was spent working on the matter, and up the y-axis is, so the vertical is how much revenue that matter generated for the firm. Now, if we feed these data into an unsupervised learning model and say, computer, please find patterns in these data for me, it might return something like this. And it kind of makes sense. We look at this, and we see red through green is kind of simple, medium, complex cases. And then we've got these more interesting clusters in blue and yellow. The yellow, we've got matters where maybe we've made a loss. We've not made as much money as the amount of time we've invested. And up in blue, we've got the really nice ones, right, where we've made loads of money and it hasn't actually taken that long. And we might want to analyze matters like this and try and understand what is it that led to those yellow ones, and how can we get more up into that blue area, for example. Now, this is where I say AI is not stealing jobs or whatever. AI turns data, the circles, into information, these colored clusters. To get knowledge relies on somebody actually looking at that and using it and kind of trying to get some kind of meaningful explanation from it. And that still requires a person. Moving on to supervised learning, similar case. In this case, we're a really big firm. and we've got some money to burn. So we're looking at all the departments across our firm. And on the x-axis is how many people we employ in those departments, and up the y-axis is how much revenue they generate. And we say, we've got some money to burn, we want to go buy in some new expertise. We want to buy a department this big. Well, we could realistically, based on historic patterns, expect to make this much money from that pattern. The red line that we're using to do this is our AI model. That's it. It's that simple. And pretty much all AI uses these two fundamental principles. Obviously, you don't need AI to draw that red line, right? You could do it by eye with some crayons. AI isn't powerful when we've got 2 dimensions like this. It's powerful when we've got tens, hundreds, millions of dimensions. It's just really hard for me to draw a million-dimensional red line to show you on a PowerPoint slide. And I promise that's the end of the maths lesson. It's that simple. That's AI in a nutshell. I mentioned millions of dimensions, which brings us to the sexy face of AI at the moment. GPT or other large language models. Meta have Llama, Google have Bard, there are others. These are essentially very, very complex, large models that are designed to kind of interact. I say understand, they don't understand language, but they're there to interact with language. I don't really want to focus on how they work or anything like that. One of the things I do want to point out is, if you've used ChatGPT, which I'm guessing a lot of people here have, you're interacting with a kind of 2-model system. There's a chatbot called Chat, which chats to GPT, which is the really, really clever bit, the large language model. And what's really cool is the companies behind these large language models provide an API access to them. So an API is basically, for those who don't know, kind of like an access point in a bit of software that allows another bit of software to talk to it. And why this is powerful is you can basically use that API to include these very clever, very complex large language models into your own products and processes. And this is what is driving a step change in the situation in AI at the moment. And I like to joke that it's because these things are no longer the purview of nerds locked in university basements, or people like me, the nerds who escaped the basement. Anybody can use these now, and that's really exciting because the nerds in the basements aren't the people who understand what the real problems are, and they're not the people with the creativity to solve those problems in specific sectors or across society. Giving these tools to people that can do that is really exciting, and we are seeing and will continue to see a boom in services that use these things. So this democratization of AI, what does it mean? Well, it's kind of just an exaggeration of all the existing benefits and cons that we've talked about for decades of AI and machine learning. We'll see cool new products, exciting, new, innovative automation, speed, accuracy of results, all these things that go hand in hand with kind of increased use of computing. The negatives, they're available to everybody, right? So topical for this panel today, they're not just the good guys that can use these things. And there's a real big problem of the kind I like to think of the computer says no problem, in that otherwise highly intelligent, highly qualified people kind of switch off their mental faculties if a computer tells them to do something, and they'll make a really stupid decision that they never would have made if the computer hadn't told them to. And obviously, there's not really any ethics or regulation around these things. Deep fakes are a really big issue. It's not really a deep fake, but I love this picture. I don't know if you remember this from a few months back. I work in this all the time, right? And I saw this picture at the weekend and thought, oh, isn't that fun? The Pope went out dressed as a member of E17. It took me 3 days until I realized that he didn't go out like a boy band in the 90s Christmas music video. This was an AI-generated picture. And it totally took me by surprise. So the big message I want to kind of leave people with is the current state of AI, as Paul said this morning, is simultaneously scary and exciting, and we shouldn't let either half of that statement blind us to the other, right? Let's not let the fact that there are scary elements distract from seizing the opportunities, but don't blindly chase the opportunities and forget the downsides. So that's me. I'll hand back to Chris. Thank you.
So I'm sure you'll all be pleased to hear there'll be a pop quiz on the way out about what is AI, and no one can leave until they've answered that correctly. So we've learned what AI is in terms that even I can understand, which is no mean feat, I will say. I'd like to think about this in the context of cybercrime or cybersecurity as well. So I note some research was published last week, which said that AI and machine learning will likely to be the most significant trend in cybersecurity across the next 2 years, specifically use cases of contextual analysis and email screening. And with that point, we'll turn to the panel and ask them some questions. So we'll start with the NCSC first. What is your assessment of the threats to the legal sector, and what role does AI play in that?
So thanks very much, firstly, for the invite to be here and the chance to come and talk about this topic. And also, secondly, to my colleague who asked me to talk to a few lawyers about cybersecurity, lesson learned on that one. So as we see the cyber threat from the National Cybersecurity Centre, it's laid out in a report that we have from 2023, from June, I think it was. And that lays out a few different areas. First of all, it explains why you as legal firms are a really juicy target. And I'm sorry to say that you are. First of all, you've got really good client information and really sensitive client information which you and your clients want to keep quiet. Next, disruption to your services could be extremely deleterious to your business, and therefore you'll want to keep those going. You deal with lots of money in various ways, whether it's conveyancing, mergers and acquisitions and other business transactions. You're in the supply chain for other really interesting firms as well, so it's not just the threat to you, but the threat to your clients from your organizations. And lastly, your reputation is really important. At least I certainly hope it is, and therefore you'll want to protect that too. So unfortunately, legal firms are really interesting and viable target for cybersecurity bad actors. So who are those? So first of all, it's cybercriminals. I won't speak too much about that just to spoil the other panel members, but I will mention that we published a report just a few weeks ago with the National Crime Agency, the NCA, that explains much more about the cybercrime ecosystem and especially about extortion and ransomware, which I would encourage you to have a look at if you're interested in wanting to know more. So we have cybercriminals. Next, we have nation-states. So if you're dealing on subjects that are of interest in nation-states, then I'm afraid you will also be a target there. Or if you are dealing with clients or working on topics that are of interest in nation-states and their national interest, you'll certainly be of interest there. Next, we have what we call hacktivists, which are people who will conduct cybersecurity attacks for a particular specific cause, which may be, again, related to the topics that you're working on. And that's, of course, the greatest risk if you're working on behalf of clients that the hacktivists care about and on to damage. And lastly, there's always the threat as well from insider threats, and that can be accidental or it can be deliberate. They will use various methods to attack you. The report talks about them in more detail, but it includes things like phishing, business email compromise, password attacks, and a few others which are all in the report if you're interested. So that's how we see the threat as it currently is. But then how do we see AI changing that? And as you'd say, I think it's going to be massive. So I think first of all, it's really important to say AI is going to be fantastic. It's going to be great, as Tom so brilliantly put it. It's really exciting and quite terrifying at the same time. So we're looking at AI from 3 different perspectives related to cybersecurity. The first is the cybersecurity of AI itself. So how do you protect the AI and the models? Because your firms and your supply chain are going to be using AI probably already and a lot more in the future. So how do we build security into that and into those tools that you are using? The next is that AI will be used to support and increase cyber attacks. So whether that's in identifying new vulnerabilities in programs that you are using, whether that's related to using it to create better phishing emails, and that's already something that we are doing to demonstrate just how good it is at that. Creating very specific emails to people from information that can be gathered from the internet. And more generally, it's just going to help attackers. It's going to help attackers automate things. It's going to be able to talk them through how to conduct attacks. So, unfortunately, AI is going to be used to increase the number and potency of cyber attacks. But luckily, of course, the last area is that it's also going to be used for cyber defense. So we are working with firms to try and help make that as productive as possible. Speaker 1. So there are already tools out there that use AI to help people respond and understand to incidents better. The most famous example at the moment is called Security Copilot, which is being tested. So I think overall what it's going to do is it's going to increase the gap. It's going to increase the gap between those who are doing the basics well and those who aren't. So more than anything, this wouldn't be a cybersecurity talk from the government if I didn't encourage you to do the basics well, particularly around cyber essentials. So do the basics in cyber essentials, and I suspect a lot of the AI attacks will pick on other people instead. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that. Interesting. So this time I'll ask Natasha, what are the emerging trends when it comes to cybercrime?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me here today. Cybercrime, I just want to differentiate into two parts. We have cyber-dependent crime, which we've heard a little bit about today, the ransomware attacks, the distributed denial of service attacks, hacking attacks, and so forth. And then we've got cyber-enabled crime, which, for example, a lot of fraud is perpetrated by the use of cyber devices in some form or another. So if we take cyber-dependent crime, in the last 12 months or so, we had over 25,000 reports of cyber attacks, and that equated to over £12 million worth of losses. Now, this is pretty impactful, but particularly if you're a small to medium enterprise, because those enterprises are prolifically targeted by ransomware hackers. And so if you are an organization with, let's say, 1 to 9 employees, you're particularly at risk of social media hacking, ransomware attacks, and general cybercrime. And I think ransomware is definitely one of the highest threats we have at the moment because of the impact it has, not just to your own organization, but to infrastructure as well. If we compare it to sort of fraud, in terms of fraud reports, just to put it into perspective, over the last 12 months, we had over 300,000 fraud reports, and that actually resulted in losses that were reported of £2.5 billion. Now, in terms of fraud organizations who were targeted by fraudsters, you will be surprised or not to learn that limited companies and PLCs are the most targeted organizations for that, and particularly within the areas of card, payment and banking and check fraud, mandate fraud, so your payment diversion frauds, and financial investments, as well as your viruses and malware and spyware attacks. I think in terms of typologies, I'd just like to talk about 3 things briefly. Something that's going on at the moment, which you may or may not be aware of, hopefully you've not been victim to this, is remote access fraud. So that's where a fraudster will call you, purporting to be from your corporate bank account or corporate banking organization, and they will convince you through social engineering to install remote access software onto your device. They will encourage you to log in, usually by putting pressure on you or making it all a rather urgent call and other tactics that social engineering employs. And at some point during the call, your screen may be blurred, but it's all part of doing this software update that they've told you about. But whilst that's going on, of course, they're starting to make transactions because they've managed to get you to log into your account at the same time. Then, of course, they're going to tell you that they're sending you a series of numbers, and it's all part of the banking update. But of course, this is your own bank actually genuinely sending you your 2-step verification code, which of course you then hand over, being duped into this engineered chat, and at that point your funds are cleared out your account. Now, there are variations to this fraud, but it usually involves obtaining remote access onto your device and perpetrating the fraud in that way. Something else I'd like to just touch on quickly as well is social media. Of course, social media is being utilized a lot more instead of face-to-face contact, and I know a lot of you will be using social media and Zoom and Teams to conduct meetings and so on and so forth. There is a risk to the KYC aspect of what you do because, of course, it provides reduced ability to really check legitimacy and authenticity of who you're speaking to. So it's just something to be aware of. And then, of course, one of the reasons why everybody's here is AI. And it really is, Tom's already touched on it, it's a combination of the various generative programs that are around, like ChatGPT. And this really is a vehicle for the future to employ deepfake technology, so visual fakes that purport to be live human beings, and also voice cloning as well. So even without the visual aspect, you've got the voice cloning as well. It could result in automated social engineering scripts being generated. And of course, AI is going to encourage a different type, an increase in phishing, which really, if you think about I say the old, it's not that old, but it's a current fraud that's going on, the "Hi Mum, I'm in trouble" WhatsApp chat, really taking that to a new level, because you've now got your loved one actually who looks like they're there on the end of a FaceTime call, who sound like them, saying they're in trouble and needing money, and funds are being transferred or will be. So I think those are the main stats and some of the current trends and emerging threats.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you.
And so moving on to Rowan then, what are the typical mistakes that firms make when it comes to cybersecurity?
Thank you very much for inviting me to the panel. It's great to be here. I think ultimately the mistakes are still the same mistakes, whether AI is involved or not. And our NCSE colleague on the left here touched on it with Cyber Essentials. It's the basics. There's far too many vendors out there that have actually been touting that their product has AI in it and has had for the last 5 to 10 years. And generally speaking, it's not genuine AI. It's more, as Tom pointed out, statistical models. And it's machine learning is far more prevalent in those products. So if you go to any show where you've got cybersecurity is one of the top agendas, you'll see there'll be plenty of vendors there that will tell you their product's the best thing since sliced bread. It's the silver bullet, it's going to fix all your problems, and it's got AI in it. And then if you sort of just peel one layer away, turns out that AI is not actually genuine AI. It's actually machine learning. It's understanding how people behave. And ultimately, security, cybersecurity, physical security, whichever security arm you want to look at, is all about human behavior. It's about understanding how humans behave, and you're trying to essentially manipulate that behavior to do things the right way rather than circumvent the controls you're putting in place to stop them doing the wrong way. So I think the mistakes generally tend to be made at the basic level, far more than the advanced level. So there's plenty of frameworks out there, there's plenty of control sets, like the Cyber Essentials Plus control set, that people can follow and they can use. That's the starter for 10. That will get you on a good foothold. And then you can advance that through the other more complex frameworks, where we talk to things like the National Institutes of Standard Technologies framework, which is from the US, quite a big framework, probably not relevant for the smaller organizations, but for the larger enterprises, it's there. For things like ISO 27001, gives you a good, solid framework of controls that are very broad and allow you to define how you want to implement. They're not black and white. They're not sort of, you must do this or you must not do this. I think with the advent of AI, and we've talked about ChatGPT and Bard, there's 3 sort of very key things I want you to take away today to consider. I'm not here to tell you to do or don't, but you should consider these 3 points. The first point is when you're inputting stuff into these large language models, you are effectively telling them that you can keep that information indefinitely because it's learning from it. If you're, as we're in a room full of lawyers, I'd expect you to have read the terms and conditions from top to bottom, unlike me, who probably didn't and just went, yeah, that'll do. You will know that that's what they're there to do. They're there to learn from what you input. And if you're inputting sensitive information into those, there's a very small chance, but still a significant chance, that if the right input was put in by someone else, and bearing in mind this is doing thousands of transactions an hour, every day, it's costing them $24 million a day to run this thing. That input could come back to someone else. Someone else could see that input or see some form of that input. So you've got to be really careful about what actually goes into it. The second thing to remember is it's the truthfulness that comes out of these engines. How true is it what it says? Bearing in mind that we've seen many cases where people have engaged with a ChatGPT or a Bard, and the answer that's come back is complete fabrication. It doesn't understand because the input that it's been given has been cleverly manipulated by the person who's input it, and it doesn't have any idea of context. It knows nothing about you or me or any of the societies we're in. It knows nothing about our job, nothing about what we're trying to do. It just relies on what you put in. So what it doesn't know is that context. So it can fabricate stuff, and you look at it and you think, well, that's a lie. It's not even I asked it. How does it know that? So you've got to be really careful about what the truths that come out the back of it, because it is, as your slide said, Tom, bad input equals bad output, and that's going to happen a lot as it starts to learn things. The third thing to remember is historical. A lot of ChatGPT 3, version 3 and 3.5, is all historical. It only goes to September 2021. So you've got to remember that even if it's historical, that history may have changed in 3 years. So again, think about and consider the information it's coming back with, and do your due diligence, shall we say, on what it spits back out to you, because you might need to actually revise that. And it shouldn't be relied on as a source of truth, as I said. It should be used as an engine to try and help kind of bring things together, find patterns and trends, as Tom was saying in his talk, and not be used as the gospel, shall we say. But I think the big mistakes really are just not considering those basics and not actually thinking about how are my users using these AI models, how are they implementing them in their day-to-day lives. There is some fantastic stuff it can help with, some fantastic things it can do, and I'm sure with all of those integrations that we love with our applications and all things of this nature, it's going to be extremely powerful as it develops. But we just need to make sure we take a step back, consider what we're inputting into these things, what are we giving it, and then making sure that what we're giving it isn't going to cause any sort of loss of data, any loss of confidential information to something that ultimately is there to learn. And it will take everything, and it won't ever probably give it back. There's nothing you can do about that. It's in there for life. And we've seen a lot of cases about copyright infringement and trademarks and things like that it's essentially learned from. A lot of people who publish books have said, my book is in this large language model. I never authorized the book to be there. So we've got to be really careful about what we put in terms of injecting stuff into these large language models. But in case of technology, AI has already been there for a while. What they consider to be AI is already there. It's only going to get more prevalent. And even my own contract management system that I use in my place has got an AI capability to go through contracts and find patterns and trends and terms and conditions that are the same. So I can pull those out all in one hit. It's very, very smart. And that's really clever. That would take hours for a human to do. It takes seconds for this to do. So there are some great benefits, but just consider those 3 points. What you input, the truth of what comes back out, and the fact that it's historical, so you may need to do some more homework.
Thanks, Rowan. Plenty of food for thought there. So in a moment, I'm going to open it up to the floor for any questions that you may have. But we've had one pre-submitted beforehand, which I know that's something that people do fear. And the question is, look, what should I do in the moment of an attack? So I'm just going to ask briefly, the two colleagues immediately left to me, what should you do? You go into work tomorrow morning, it's happened. What do you do?
Go first. Thank you. So if you're undergoing a live attack, and I'm talking a cyber-dependent crime attack, so a ransomware attack or a hacking attack and so forth, I would like you to call the Enhanced Cyber Reporting Service. There's a telephone number. It's 0300 123 2040. It's a 24/7 service, and it's an exclusive service for business, charities, and other organisations. You will receive specialist help and signposting. For example, you might get signposted to the NCSC, you can sign up to newsletters, you might get signposted to a cyber resilience centre. But it's really important, and of course, if you are undergoing something like that, to get that specialist help, it will actually also be necessary if, for example, you subsequently make an insurance claim, because you'll get the essential crime reference number that you need. And also, if there's third-party involvement, for example, a financial compensation recovery scheme involvement, you will need that there as well. However, of course, prevention is always better than the cure. And as a lot of you, is my understanding, are small to medium enterprises, there might not be massive budgets for cyber protection. And something very easy that you can do is install something called Police Cyber Alarm onto your systems. It's free. And it's a Home Office funded piece of software that you do put on. It is safe. And it will alert you if your system is vulnerable or actually under threat. It will also alert us, and we can then actually provide advice via your local police force, because we can notify and disseminate that information out to them. So that's something definitely worthwhile looking up. I have arranged some handouts with links and things afterwards, which will be available on your way out. So if you do feel that that would be of use, by all means pick one of those up, and that will signpost you a bit further. I hope that answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Rowan, your take on this?
Yes, I think the first thing is don't panic. Don't rush to make any decisions. I know it's a frightening scenario. I've been in it myself personally several times. I've dealt with 3 different cases in the last 2 months where we had our good friends at the NCSC involved in one of those. And it is a significant scenario to incur, and a lot of people do get scared. They're afraid of what's going to happen. So the first thing is to say, don't panic. The second thing I would say is do seek support. I mean, what Natasha's just shared there is fantastic. A great way to do, to get some immediate help from someone. Organisations like myself at Little Fish, we obviously can help people as well in those scenarios. We do have cyber services in what we do, but we've had other customers who we work with, not on the cyber side of things, but on the service desk and the other owners of our business who have been attacked. They ring us and say, we haven't got a clue, what do we do? And we have supported them through that process. We work with a number of really good third parties that are very extremely well trained in digital forensics, which is the key bit that you need in these scenarios. You need to be able to protect that chain of custody, and I know Natasha will love that word because it's a very police word, but it's that chain of custody. But that's the key bit, is being able to protect that and try and see if you can recover from that scenario. My best advice is now, if you haven't already got a plan for when this happens, is to go away and investigate putting a plan together. You need some form of plan to say, if this does happen, what can I do to get out? Most of the time, in my early career, we had backups that were on tape. If everyone remembers tape backups, they were fantastic. You had to change 24 tapes a week. It was a great job. But you know what? It was so much easier to restore from backup. But now we're all loving the cloud, and we all got rid of all of those things. Typically, these attackers will go for backups first before they go for you if they do get inside, because what they want to do is they want maximum damage. And the maximum damage they can do is to stop you restoring things. So yeah, my advice is, if you haven't got a plan, start to put one together. And if you need help with that, the NCSC has got fantastic resource online. It's all free. Go and seek it out and look for that, because that gives you a really good step-by-step approach to building a recovery plan, a way to recover from that disaster.
Great stuff. Thank you, Rowan.
So we heard lots there from the panel about AI itself and about the ways in which it may change the risks associated with cybercrime. And we also heard a number of ways in which you as businesses can keep your firm safe. And the more keen-eyed amongst you will have noticed that at the in-person conference, we had a panelist from the National Cyber Security Centre. For obvious reasons, given the nature of their role and organisation, we're not able to broadcast them. And it's rather appropriate, I think, in this case, that we used an AI to repeat their words in that session. So let's jump straight into taking further questions. And a quick reminder, if you want to submit a question to us, you can do so by clicking at the link below. The first couple of questions have come in, so I'll start asking these. And our first question, is AI and tech the preserve of big city firms? How can my smaller firm ever hope to make use? And we'll turn to Rowan first, if that's okay, and then follow up with Tom.
Yeah, definitely. I think smaller firms can take advantage of AI. I don't think it is the preserve of big city firms. There are a multitude of things that use AI, as I described in the panel talk, that actually is machine learning. It's just got the AI badge on it. So lots of things you're using today will probably be doing some very similar things to what AI might be doing. ChatGPT clearly is free. 3.5, version 3.5 is free, so anyone can use that. Version 4 does require subscription, but I think it's something like $20 a month, so not too breaking the bank. And that has a few more features in it that you can tap into. But Microsoft Copilot that's coming out, I think it's on general release now in the UK. Copilot is going to be Microsoft's new big investment, trying to introduce AI into all of our everyday things like in Word and Excel and PowerPoint. And again, the subscription to that I think is roughly at the moment £25 per user per month. But that, I will assure you, will go down as they start to see the benefit of that and see more and more people using it. So always see these things as they will start at a certain price and they will start to drop as they come, more and more people use them. They can start to be clever with their pricing. So I think smaller firms will be able to take advantage. I don't think it's just the preserve for the bigger firms. But there are plenty of things out there that are using AI and machine learning today that you can use yourself.
Thanks, Rowan. Just I guess to add from stuff I've seen in the past. So obviously, I talked about the democratization of AI. AI is becoming cheaper and more accessible to everybody, and it will start being baked into kind of products that everyone uses. Things like CRM systems will be driven by AI. So maybe dedicated in-house, big, large-scale stuff might be the preserve of larger firms. But to be honest, are they even going to be necessary with the democratization of these tools? As Rowan says, Copilot's incredibly powerful. GPT is incredibly powerful, and they're not particularly expensive products. And we will see more and more third parties using these things to build products which are affordable for most firms, not just the preserve of the big ones.
Thanks, Tom. We've had another couple of questions come in asking for specific details of the phone numbers and the links that Natasha mentioned there in the recording. And I'll cover this later in terms of the resources that will be made available to you after this session. But maybe this is a good chance to bring in Natasha now. Are you able to talk to us through some of the specific examples from the most recent Cyber Monthly Threat Update alerts?
Yes, sure. So first of all, I'll just repeat the numbers that I gave in the main presentation, which was 0300 123 2040 for the enhanced cybercrime reporting service, and also police cyber alarm, which is what you can do to proactively install on your systems, and it's www.cyberalarm.police.uk/police cyber alarm. So there will be, and I think it's there already actually, a handout on the Solicitors Regulation Authority post-event page on the on-demand page, where those details will be available to you after this. In terms of the sort of last couple of months worth of updates or emerging trends, there's been sort of a couple of things that have come to light that you may want to be aware of in terms of phishing emails in particular. One of them is bank fraud. Obviously, this extends on from the remote access fraud, but it's still going on by email. And essentially, it requests the recipient to update their details by clicking a malicious link. And specifically, Halifax has been one of the organisations that's been used in these fraudulent emails. I think that was in September. We had some emerging fraud with regards to that. There's another one as well. You may be aware, and it's called a free spin phishing email. You may be aware that when you sometimes click an advert to a product that you like, you'll get a spin cycle on your screen, and it will say you've won so and so. Now we're seeing reports in with these free spins phishing emails where you're actually being asked to spin the wheel, but then put in your details to win a prize or click a malicious link. So it's just to be mindful of that. There's another one which is quite concerning, which is a McAfee Total Protection phishing email that's we've seen in the last couple of months, which informs recipients that their McAfee protection is literally about to expire and they must renew now. So you're getting that pressure and that sort of social engineering within the email that we've talked about before in the main presentation, and that is something that we've seen reports on recently. And then of course in the last couple of months we've had the iPhone 15 Plus or 15 Pro launched, and we've seen phishing emails with regards to this where people are being sent emails saying they've won a prize, and in order to claim that prize they're being asked to enter all sorts of details. So the long and the short of this, I think, is that fraudsters are very entrepreneurial. As something new happens and as something emerges, it's being taken advantage of by fraudsters. So it's really just about making sure that you keep mindful and you keep aware of what you're doing, what you're clicking, and information that you're providing. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. We've had a question come in, which is very short, but is one that sounds like it's for Rowan. Will immutable backups help?
Absolutely, immutable backups will help. That is one of the first targets when people get into an environment. The first thing they look for once they've done an initial bit of reconnaissance is they'll go and find out where those backups are. and they'll try to delete those backups or remove them or destroy them in some way, and then they'll attack the live environment, so you've got no way to restore. So mutable backups, 100% definitely is something you should be doing. As I said in the talk, we don't really use tape anymore. A lot of people have moved away from that, and they want to have a cloud backup that can synchronize relatively quickly and not have to wait an entire day, which makes sense because that would reduces our recovery point objective, the time that we can go back to. But the flip side of that is, of course, that the backups are online. They're in a place where people can get to them. They're no longer on a machine-fed tape. So there's that weighing up of have we done the right thing moving all our backups to the cloud? And in some cases that I've seen and I've worked on personally, people haven't, and they haven't made them immutable, and therefore they have been destroyed. It's the first thing they go for. So yeah, 100%, make sure those backups you put into the cloud are immutable. They can't be tampered with, and make sure that any access to those backups is very limited to the people that need to see them.
Thanks, Rowan. Another question for you here, which has come in, and it's related to a point you mentioned in the video, where you talk about the use of LLMs at firms, that's large language models. How can we monitor the use of LLMs within firms?
It's a tricky one. We had this question came up at the conference as well. Short of installing keyloggers, we can't really watch what our users are doing in terms of what they input into these large language models. But I think the best way to enforce control is through policy. So we need to create a policy around the use of these large language models. We need to educate our users on them. We need to say to them what can they put in, what can't they put in, what they should avoid in inputting into the large language model. But also we can do things like web filtering using a web hygiene product, so we can see who's using them, how often they're using them, obviously to make sure that that use is within policy, within guidelines. So we can't really watch what actually goes in without being very intrusive, and I strongly advise you don't do that. But we can see how much is being used, and also we can make sure that we're educating our users to understand that these large language models are there to learn. Everything you put in is a learning experience for it. But remember, it doesn't understand context. It is historical, the data that comes out. So you may need to do some more homework on that front. And also just make sure you're not putting anything sensitive in there. Any case references, anything like that is going in, because it will learn that and it will keep that knowledge. It may never come back out again. Someone may never be able to pull that back out again, but there's always a chance. So best thing to do is not to do it.
Thanks, Rowan. So we've a question come in about, does the SRA think it's concerning that AI tools could be offering legal advice rather than a real person? The answer from this one will be that supervision is key, of course. So from the SRA's perspective, it's imperative that the process is supervised, that the AI is supervised, particularly in the same way as any other constituent part of that particular workflow. That's really important. We've had a question come in here. Can you recommend any product or approach for simulating phishing emails as part of staff training? So it's not our role to recommend specific products per se. So we're not able to do that. However, I think Rowan's probably going to come in about the last part of that question. So an approach for simulating phishing emails as part of staff training.
Yeah, there are a myriad of products that can do this, and we have our own tools and capability in house at Littlefish to do this as well. What I would advise is that when you're building phishing simulation, don't be mean. I've seen some very mean phishing simulations, things like bonuses and stuff like that to try and catch people out. So saying, oh, you've received a bonus, just click here and open this, and redundancy is the other mean one I've seen. And we've been targeted as an organization with someone pretending to be someone in the business saying loads of people are going to be very redundant, open this to see if it's you, sort of thing. So don't be mean, because that doesn't actually teach anything apart from touching on people's sensitivity. What I would say, though, is make sure that the phishing simulation you do generate is targeted at groups of users. Try not to do it to everyone, because it kind of dilutes the message. And so what we try to do is we take, say, like a small amount of users at a time, and we send a specific one to them. And then maybe the next month we send it to another set of users, but maybe it's different. And a good thing to do is probably use people that you are aware of, your company users are aware of. So a Microsoft one would be a classic, because everyone's using Microsoft technologies most of the day, if not Google. Using suppliers maybe that you're using, pretending to be those suppliers, because it's what we're trying to do is not really teach people not to click links. We obviously don't want them to do that. The key for us is, and the key metric for any phishing simulation is how many people report it to you. That's the bit you want to see increase. We don't want to see people clicking the links. We don't want to see people opening attachments, but that's not the target. The target is how many people actually report to you. So in combination with a phishing simulation exercise, you first of all want to train your staff on what to look for. What are the key elements we need to check before we even think about opening attachments or clicking any links in an email? So if we can get that bit first and then do the phishing test, we can see if that education was effective. If it was, great. If it wasn't, we need to go back to the drawing board. But yeah, there's tons of products out there. We're happy to talk about them offline, but yeah, I can't really recommend an individual one at this stage.
Thanks, Rowan. We've got a question here about just how easy is it to get an LLM or something similar to produce generative text or even audio purporting to be from someone in particular? So I'm going to hand this one to Tom.
So I guess all AI is based on data. If there are enough data, then it can do some pretty clever stuff. So if you went to ChatGPT right now and said, write me a poem in the style of Robbie Burns about cybercrime, it probably would be able to and be fairly convincing, like a Robbie Burns poem. Robbie Burns obviously didn't write about cybercrime. For specific individuals, that might be slightly harder. It depends how much of their kind of personality is conveyed in public writing that's available of theirs. As we move into audio and video, in my opinion, the technology is just not quite there yet. I've seen some really cool services that can kind of make avatars. This is where you actually go and feed it the data yourself. You record yourself speaking and video. And then the idea is it can create an AI avatar of you speaking. Now, obviously, to do that, you are providing a lot of the data yourself. And I still think they're not particularly convincing, especially if you start doing stuff like turning your head sideways. They're really bad at kind of showing that sort of thing. So actually, a kind of note, if someone's staring at you in the face and not turning their head sideways at all, I'm always a bit suspicious these days when you see a video like that. But yeah, I guess as we always talk about AI, the tech is moving at such a pace that what is true now might not be true in a year's time. So at the moment, I'm not convinced by AI generation of audio or video of specific individuals, but give it a bit of time, maybe it will.
Thanks, Tom. We've had a couple of questions come in about cyber insurance specifically, and our message on this one would be to speak to your insurer about exactly what's covered and how that may suit your business needs. I know also that Natasha has some data on the types of firm who account for the majority of cases, so I'll hand over to Natasha for this one.
Thank you. And I think I alluded to this in the main presentation, but small to medium enterprises are really the sort of mostly sort of reporting type of organisation that we're experiencing for fraud. So, for example, in the top 3 frauds that we're getting from organisations and small to medium enterprises mostly are business email compromise. They're getting about 32% of our reports, and that's the highest reported fraud by organisations that the Enhanced Cybersecurity Service actually received. The next one is ransomware, and that's the second highest reported, and that's about 28% near on. And the small to medium enterprises were responsible for the highest volume of reports, and that may well be because small to medium enterprises may not have big budgets to mitigate against this type of fraud. So perhaps that's something that's worth considering, and therefore insurance is definitely something to think about. I can't recommend, of course. Hacking, on the other hand, is the third highest reported fraud by organisations at just under 20%, and social media hacking is really sort of the most targeted, with internal systems hacking being a close second. Something that's emerged also throughout August and September are insider threats and stolen or spoofed credentials, usually from sort of disgruntled employees, but this is something that we've seen also in the last couple of months. So insurance is a consideration, but it's like Chris has said, it's a matter of for you on the discussions you have surrounding that and what level you might want to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that with the cyber insurance, I think we're seeing a lot more of the insurance organisations stop offering cyber insurance because of the complexities of it. So I would say what I'm seeing more of now is people investing in a digital forensics incident response service, what we call DFIR, as their insurance rather than going to an insurance company, because the insurance company is upping the level that you need to achieve. And for some small organizations, sometimes it's just too high. It's not practical to be, ISO 27001 certified as well as Cyber Essentials Plus and all the others thrown in. So in order to meet their requirements to obtain insurance, it's becoming too big. But DFIR, a DFIR service, so a digital forensics incident response service, is actually more attainable and probably is going to be slightly cheaper than cyber insurance. But you have to speak to your insurer to see, what their requirements are. But that's the change in the market that we've seen as an MSSP, is that people are more asking us now saying, look, we haven't got cyber insurance because we can't obtain it because of the level they're asking for. Is there an alternative? And the alternative is to have a DFIR service that's on hand, on tap, 24/7, that you can go to if there's ever a major incident.
Thanks, Rowan. And then I think what may be the last question we've had so far. So if you do want to submit any more, please do get them in now. Do the panel think that we, the profession, should be proactively giving clients cyber hints, do's or do nots on their engagement? And I suppose from our perspective here, it can't hurt to reiterate this message, but that clearly your clients should take responsibility for their own cyber safety. And I think if we think about some of the links and the phone numbers, etc., that Natasha's mentioned earlier, it can't hurt to sort of pass those on and raise visibility and awareness for those particular ones. I don't know if anyone else on the panel has anything to add on this question.
Yeah, I think I was going to say just on that front, absolutely. If there's things that you want to suggest to people, feel free to do so, as long as they're backed by something. I mean, the best source, as we said on the panel, is the NCSC. They've got a lot of guidance, a lot of things that small businesses should be doing. They've got a small businesses 10 steps to cyber, which I think is really powerful. And I said those basic things are the things that people are sort of forgetting in the glory and the light of these new AI machines that have appeared. Everyone's seeing the wow and going, "Whoa, this can do great stuff," and they're sort of forgetting those basic things. So I really do offer and say, check out the NCSC website. There's lots of tips on there. There's lots of guides on there on what small businesses, small to medium businesses should be doing, and that will obviously help you in the future in order to advise your clients as well.
Thanks, everyone. So we have no more questions coming in at this point. And if that's the case, then I'd like to offer a huge thank you to all of our speakers for sharing their expertise here today. If you do have a specific query that pops into your mind after this finishes, please do reach out to either our ethics helpline or the SRA Innovate service. And one important reminder I have to give you that all the resources today, in particular those referred to by both Natasha and Rowan, can be found on our on-demand pages. So look, I think it's been a really good session, but we want to know what you think. Did this format work for you? How could we make it better? Please click on the feedback link below and let us know your views for that. And finally, this is the last session of our virtual conference. So we're bringing the curtain down a week. We hope you've enjoyed the range of sessions that we've presented. We will be sending out evaluation forms to get feedback. Please, please, please do try and complete it, because it really, really helps us to plan for future events. And it only remains for me to offer my sincere thanks to you for your time and for your questions today. Thank you.